7 years earlier, the world was completely normal. Joel Dawson was just an ordinary teenager enjoying life, skateboarding with friends, and spending every chance he got with his girlfriend, Amy. Like everyone else, he believed tomorrow was guaranteed. Then everything changed. But before we see how one mistake turned the entire world into a monster-infested nightmare, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying the recap. And trust me, Joel's most dangerous battle and the emotional ending are still ahead, so stick around until the end. One day, scientists discovered a massive asteroid speeding toward Earth. With only days before impact, humanity launched missiles loaded with chemical compounds to destroy it before it could wipe out all life on the planet. Against all odds, the mission was a success. The asteroid exploded high above the Earth, and everyone celebrated what seemed like the greatest victory in human history. But they celebrated too soon. The chemicals released during the explosion mixed with the atmosphere and returned to Earth as toxic rain. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then, within weeks, the impossible started happening. Almost every cold-blooded creature on the planet began to mutate. Tiny insects grew into terrifying giants. Frogs became monsters capable of swallowing people whole. Centipedes stretched longer than buses, while crabs, spiders, and countless other creatures evolved into deadly predators. Cities fell one after another as humanity was pushed to the brink of extinction. The few survivors escaped underground into reinforced bunkers, hoping the nightmare above would eventually end. Joel was one of the lucky ones. For the next 7 years, he lived beneath the surface with dozens of other survivors. While everyone else learned to fight, stand guard, and protect the colony, Joel became the cook. Whenever monsters attacked, the others grabbed their weapons and rushed into battle. Joel froze. No matter how hard he tried, fear always got the better of him. Deep down, he hated the person he had become, but everything was about to change when an unexpected voice came through the colony's radio. The voice on the radio was unmistakable. It was Amy. For a moment, Joel couldn't believe what he was hearing. After 7 long years, she was still alive, living in a survivor colony nearly 80 miles away along the coast. Hearing her voice brought back memories he had buried for years, and suddenly, life inside the bunker didn't feel like living anymore. That night, Joel couldn't sleep. The thought of Amy consumed him. He kept wondering if she still remembered him, if she still felt the same way, or if she had already moved on. The next morning, Joel made a decision that shocked everyone. He was going to leave the bunker and find her. His friends immediately tried to stop him. The surface was filled with monsters, and Joel had almost no survival experience. He wasn't a fighter, he wasn't a hunter, and everyone knew that whenever danger appeared, he completely froze. To them, this wasn't a rescue mission. It was suicide. But Joel had already made up his mind. Armed with nothing more than a backpack, a crossbow he barely knew how to use, and a map leading toward Amy's colony, he climbed the ladder and stepped onto the surface for the first time in 7 years. The world above was breathtaking. Nature had reclaimed everything. Trees grew through abandoned buildings, highways were covered in thick vegetation, and the silence felt almost peaceful. Until something moved. Hidden beneath the leaves, a gigantic mutated frog suddenly lunged toward Joel. Within seconds, his journey turned into a desperate fight for survival. Joel struggled desperately as thick vines wrapped around his legs, pinning him to the ground. Before he could free himself, a gigantic mutated toad burst from the undergrowth. Its long tongue shot forward, wrapped around Joel's body, and began dragging him straight toward its enormous mouth. No matter how hard he fought, he couldn't break free. Just when it seemed like his journey was about to end only minutes after it had begun, a stray dog suddenly charged out of the trees. The fearless animal clamped its teeth onto the toad's tongue, forcing the monster to loosen its grip. Joel wasted no time. He cut himself free and sprinted away while the dog kept the creature distracted. Moments later, the loyal animal caught up with him, refusing to leave his side. Joel quickly realized the dog's owner hadn't survived the apocalypse, leaving the faithful companion completely alone. From that moment on, the two traveled together. For the first time since leaving the bunker, Joel wasn't completely alone anymore. But the surface had another surprise waiting for them. While making their way through the forest, the ground suddenly gave way beneath Joel's feet. He crashed into a deep concealed pit. As he looked around, his heart sank. The walls of the pit were crawling with giant leeches, and they were slowly making their way toward him. With no way to climb out, Joel prepared himself for the worst. Then, without warning, arrows and blades flew into the pit. Within seconds, every leech was dead. Looking up, Joel saw 2 experienced survivors standing above him. Clyde, and a young girl named Minnow. Without knowing it, Joel had just met the people who would teach him how to survive in a world ruled by monsters. Clyde and Minnow took Joel back to their camp, where they treated his injuries and gave him something he had never truly learned before, how to survive. Over the next few days, Joel listened carefully as Clyde explained that every creature behaved differently. Some hunted using sound, others relied on movement, and understanding your enemy could mean the difference between life and death. Minnow helped Joel improve his aim with a bow, teaching him to stay calm instead of panicking whenever danger appeared. At first, he missed nearly every shot, but little by little, his confidence began to grow. Before Joel continued his journey, Clyde handed him a survival field guide filled with notes about the monsters roaming the surface. Knowledge keeps you alive, Clyde told him. He also reminded Joel of something he'd never forget. Don't run from who you are. With Boy faithfully by his side, Joel thanked them for everything and continued toward Amy's colony. Not long after leaving, disaster struck again. Boy wandered too close to a patch of loose ground, and a gigantic mutated centipede suddenly burst from beneath the earth. The monster lunged straight toward the helpless dog. For a split second, Joel froze. Then he remembered everything Clyde and Minnow had taught him. Instead of running, he drew his bow. His first arrow struck the creature in the neck, slowing it down but failing to stop it. The centipede let out a terrifying screech and charged directly toward Joel. Holding his nerve, Joel waited until the very last second. Then released one final arrow. The shot flew straight into the monster's face. The giant centipede collapsed only inches away from him. Joel had finally done it. For the first time since the apocalypse began, he had defeated one of the surface's deadliest creatures on his own, and saved Boy's life in the process. At that moment, Joel stopped seeing himself as the frightened cook hiding underground. He was finally becoming a survivor. After defeating the giant centipede and saving Boy, Joel continued his journey toward the coast. Every step forward reminded him that he wasn't the same frightened cook who had climbed out of the bunker just days earlier. As evening approached, Joel and Boy came across an abandoned house. Hoping to find food and supplies, they cautiously searched the building. Instead, they discovered something neither of them expected. Sitting quietly inside the house was a MAV-1S unit, a service robot that had spent years helping survivors after the apocalypse. Although her battery was almost completely drained, MAV-1S welcomed Joel with the same kindness she had shown everyone before him. For the first time in days, Joel finally had someone to talk to. He opened up about his journey, about leaving the bunker, and about risking everything just to see Amy again. MAV-1S listened patiently, asking simple questions that made Joel realize how much he had already changed. When Joel explained that he needed to contact Amy's colony, MAV-1S looked down at her remaining battery life. Without hesitation, she plugged the power cable from her arm into Joel's portable radio, sacrificing the little energy she had left so he could make one final call. Moments later, the radio crackled to life. Joel finally reached Amy. Relieved to hear his voice, Amy told him she was safe and revealed that another group of survivors had recently arrived at the colony. They claimed to have a yacht waiting nearby and promised to take everyone to a safer place. The conversation was brief before the signal faded away. That night, Joel stayed beside MAV-1S as her battery slowly ran out. The two talked quietly beneath the stars until, with one final smile, the robot gently powered down forever. The next morning, Joel and Boy continued their journey, unaware that another deadly creature was already waiting along their path. Leaving MAV-1S house behind, Joel and Boy continued their journey through the dense forest, knowing they were getting closer to Amy's colony with every mile. As they walked, Joel suddenly noticed something unusual. The ground ahead wasn't still. Something enormous was tunneling beneath the earth, moving silently through the soil. Realizing they had been spotted, Joel grabbed Boy, and the two took off running through the forest as the massive creature chased them from underground, tearing through the earth behind them. With nowhere else to go, they reached the edge of a shallow stream and quickly ducked behind a fallen tree trunk. Joel remembered everything Clyde had taught him. The sand gobbler hunted by detecting movement. Holding Boy close, Joel gently covered the dog's mouth, silently begging him not to make a sound. The creature slowly emerged from beneath the ground, towering over the fallen log. It searched the area for several tense seconds, waiting for even the slightest movement. Joel didn't move. Boy didn't move. After what felt like forever, the sand gobbler finally disappeared back beneath the earth. Relieved, Joel slowly let out a breath. But before they could leave, Boy noticed something floating in the nearby stream. It was the clothes of his former owner, washed away during the chase. Without hesitation, Boy ran toward the water and jumped in to retrieve them. The splash echoed through the forest. Joel's heart sank. Seconds later, the ground began shaking again. The sand gobbler was coming back. Knowing Boy wouldn't escape in time, Joel jumped into the stream and pulled him to safety. Then he remembered the grenade Clyde had given him before they parted ways. As the enormous creature burst from beneath the ground with its mouth wide open, Joel pulled the pin and The voice sounded distant at first. Then it became clearer. Joel! Joel! Slowly opening his eyes, Joel realized someone was shaking him awake. His body was burning with fever, and the poison had drained nearly all of his strength. As his vision finally cleared, he saw her. Amy. After 7 long years, the person who had inspired him to cross a world filled with monsters was finally standing right in front of him. Barely able to believe it, Joel smiled. I actually made it. Without wasting another second, Amy and the others carried Joel back to their colony, where they immediately began treating the poison spreading through his body. Hours later, Joel finally woke up feeling much better. For the first time in days, he was safe. As the two sat together overlooking the ocean, they slowly caught up on everything they had missed during the last 7 years. Joel told Amy about leaving the bunker, meeting Clyde and Minnow, finding Boy, surviving the monsters, and everything he had endured just to see her again. Amy listened quietly, amazed that the frightened boy she once knew had managed to survive such an impossible journey. But as the conversation continued, Joel began noticing something. The reunion he had imagined for years wasn't happening the way he expected. Both of them had changed. The feelings were still there, but life had moved on. Amy had become one of the leaders of her colony, spending every day protecting the people around her. Her priorities were different now, and Joel slowly realized that neither of them was the same person they had been before the apocalypse. Even so, the two shared a quiet moment together, grateful that against all odds, they had been given another chance to see each other again. But their reunion didn't last long. The peaceful afternoon was interrupted by the arrival of a large yacht approaching the shore. Standing aboard the vessel was a charismatic survivor named Cap, accompanied by his crew. Introducing himself with a warm smile, Cap claimed he had been traveling from colony to safer place where they could start over. To everyone in Amy's colony, he looked like the answer to all their problems. But Joel couldn't shake the feeling that something about Cap didn't seem right. The next morning, Cap and his crew settled into the colony as if they had known everyone for years. He spoke about a place far across the ocean where survivors could finally live without constantly fearing monsters. His stories were convincing, and before long, almost everyone in the colony believed him. That evening, Cap's crew prepared a large meal for everyone. As food ran with Boy faithfully walking beside him, Joel looked toward the horizon, ready for whatever adventure came next.